Athletes, take your mark, get set. It's time for the Addict Athlete podcast. Hey, everybody, Coach Blue Robinson here. I want to thank everyone who's been downloading and sharing and getting this podcast out to people who have needed help with any kind of addiction recovery. Addict Athlete is a 501c3 nonprofit company. And because so, we depend a lot on donations. And so right now, during our 9th year anniversary, which is kind of hard for me to believe, we have a fundraiser open that's going to be hopefully used to better the lives of people that are struggling with addiction, specifically in the COVID epidemic right now, where there's a little bit of a problem getting some services out there. Addict to Athlete stands ready to step up and help, and our donation page is open. We'd love to have you guys come on board and support. And if not financial, please jump on there to our web pages and our Facebook pages, social media, and drop a story. We'd love to hear more about how you found recovery and how sobriety has increased and helped your life, get back on track. We are grateful today, athletes, to have a special guest. This is the first of hopefully many of our certified sober coaches who has just recently completed the program. Addict to Athlete started a sober coaching program about 3 months ago, and we rigorously put these guys and gals through the test. And Haley's the first one to one of the first ones to graduate and finish. So, Haley, say hello to everybody out here.
Hi, I am glad you had me. This is great. I'm excited.
It's good to have you on board. So you were interested in Addict to Athlete for a few reasons. You are a recreational therapist, which I have a special place in my heart for rec therapists. I don't really know why, but I do. And you heard about us a while ago because you did some internship with us years ago, and kind of have always kind of followed the page and kind of stayed in tune with what we're doing. And the sober coaching was something that you wanted to do, but I really thought it would be great to have you on and talk a little bit about, your why rec therapy, why recovery, why Addict to Athlete, and why now your own sober coaching like business. I'm curious, and I know that the listeners are going to want to know more about you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll kind of go from there.
All right. Lots of whys. Where to begin? Yeah. So, I don't know. Where should I begin?
How did you hear about Addict to Athlete? I'm curious.
So Addict to Athlete,
way back then.
That's a good starting point, because I've kind of been, lurking in the shadows with the team for a very long time. Basically, I like you mentioned, I went to school to become a recreation therapist, and that was shortly after I had entered recovery. And I really liked the philosophy of Addict to Athlete, the erase and replace, the turning your mess into a message, the act of getting out and doing and moving, and, kind of like recovery in action, which is really the essence of recreation therapy. So I loved the program and everything that you guys stood for. And so you kind of became like my case study of sorts for my whole college experience. Yeah. Yes. So it was hard because I, always lived kind of a ways away from where you guys were holding meetings and stuff. So I found random ways to stay connected and be a part of the team, but, nobody really knows that I'm here.
You're a diamond in the rough. Absolutely.
So I've just been following along and just waiting for an opportunity, always knowing there was a reason why Addict to Athlete was in my life.
Yeah.
And just waiting for, that moment when it was like, okay, this is it. This is what we're going to do. This is why we have gone down this path together. And so when you launched the certified sober coaching program, that just made perfect sense. As a rec therapist, I've wanted to work with people in recovery from substance abuse. But, the treatment center setting with rec therapy wasn't quite what I was looking for. I wanted to work more one-on-one. Mm-hmm. And so it just made perfect sense.
It's interesting because, it's funny, as much as I like to say, yeah, I'm the founder of Addict to Athlete. Really, it's my rec therapist that kind of founded this thing, because she did so much with me when I first started kind of getting to know her. And, I remember one time she put a little rec therapy challenge in front of me. It was these pennies, right? And she's like, you got to move these pennies so they match. There's 3 up and 3 down, but you can't take away any pennies. And man, I sat there and stared at this thing for hours, and I'm like, what are you doing? Trying to get into my brain. Basically, she was just kind of saying, hey, ease your mind a little bit. You're too stressed, kid. And as we were dating and stuff, I was still kind of a mess. And so it was awesome because she like showed me, and it was just picking up one and moving it to a certain position. And all of a sudden there were 3 up and 3 down. And I'm like, oh, what the crap? How do you know this magic? And it was awesome because her family was active and whatnot, and I didn't realize that as I was training to run marathons with her dad, and just seeing how active these people are, it made sense why she chose rec therapy and how important it is in the world of recovery. And I'm with you, Haley. I do not believe in the heart of hearts that your addiction program, your therapeutic program, your treatment center is any good unless it has active rec therapy in it. And those that take that away first are the stupidest programs that walk the face of the earth. And those that think, those that think therapists can do this, or sudseeds, or peer-to-peer mentors, we can go out and do experiential activities. No, you can't. It's a very specific trained position in my eyes. And programs that dumb that down, I think, are dumb in themselves. So I really do think that what you're saying holds true to my heart. And thus, the reason why I've seen Addict to Athlete thrive so much is because of that mindset of you've got to get out and be moving. You've got to do things that are going to get you challenged and push yourself a little bit. I remember watching Marissa take kids down to the ropes course and challenge them in physical tasks and watching them throw in the towel and give up. And it's funny because in an office, you can emotionally push someone pretty far and they can get through some of those barriers. But when they're standing up on this little platform and they need to jump to a little ring to grab, and that fear and that anxiety is bubbling up, the rec therapist is down there to be like, hey, we're going to coach you through this. We're going to do this. And then when they're done, they actually do it. They accomplish it. To watch that light in their eyes come back on, it's unlike anything else I've ever seen. And so, I've always had a special place in my heart for rec therapists, and I'm so glad that you've stayed on top of your game, and I look forward to seeing what you're going to create. But this comes at you in a little bit of a, I guess, in a personal way, because you yourself had struggled with addiction for a while, and you found your way out of it. And would you mind sharing a little bit about kind of how you did that and kind of how you navigated into sobriety?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I had been pretty heavily addicted to alcohol mostly, but, I was also actively using pretty much any drug that was offered to me. That
Mm-hmm.
had been going on for pretty much my entire adult life, starting at about 16, with a few brief moments of sobriety to raise, to not, I mean, I used when I was raising my girls, but I got clean long enough to be pregnant and get
Mm-hmm.
them safely into the world.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I mean, I struggled, and it just got messy fast, and it was rough. And there was that point where I realized, I was down on the Colorado River on a camping trip with my husband, and it just gone too far. We had taken
Mm-hmm.
it to the point where I was pretty much standing at a threshold where I wasn't at rock bottom, but I was getting ready to go over this cliff, where I was going to lose everything if I kept moving towards alcohol.
Yeah.
And so it was definitely that, that moment of clarity that, just very powerful, like, this is it. This is the end of the line. And so I had no idea how I was going to pull this off. I had no desire to quit drinking. That was never on my agenda. It just wasn't part of the plan, but I had no choice. So we went home after this trip, our life in shambles, with, no money and, some legal charges to deal with. And it was just
Mm-hmm.
like, what now? And I tried to I went to an AA meeting, didn't work well for me. However, there were certain principles of it, and I read the book that, really convinced me that, hey, you know what, you've got to, you have to realize that this is it. You're not one
Mm-hmm.
of the ones that gets to drink for fun. Like,
Exactly.
you're one of the ones that's going to have to say goodbye to this for good. And so I credit AA to really like slapping it in my face and making me come to terms with it.
Yeah.
But beyond that, my recovery was a lot of time, alone, sitting on my front porch, reading inspirational quotes,
Love it.
drinking coffee, watching the sunrise, and really just ticking the hours away. But at the same time, I had been, I've always been super active in the outdoors and recreation and fly fishing and camping and all that wonderful stuff. I'd never done it really sober.
Mhm.
So, but that was okay. I knew I enjoyed it. So I did spend a lot of time going out fishing. And arbitrarily, I set a goal right before I got sober to catch 25 trout on a fly from 20 different bodies of water in Utah.
Love it.
And had I not gotten sober, I knew I wouldn't have met this goal. But I decided, okay, well, you know what? I've got all this time on my hands. Here we go. Let's do this. And so I spent a lot of time backpacking, going to all these different bodies of water all over Utah. I think in the end, after I completed my goal, it was like 50 plus bodies of water that we fished that were totally unique. And I had documented the whole process for the goal itself, like, oh, here's this fish I caught from this lake. And then I eventually put it all together in a video. And it wasn't until, years later, 5 years later, that I realized that I had inadvertently, done rec therapy to get myself through
Mhm.
recovery, get
Right.
myself sober. But I had documented my first 90 days of recovery through this fly fishing goal that I had set for myself. And, there were lots of pictures of me with the kids and camping and, just these beautiful lakes and scenery. And, I see in those pictures, I see someone that was, really kind of nervous and unsure about what the future held. But at the same time, we were moving forward, and, life was going on and we were figuring it out, and I was getting sober. And yeah, it was somewhere about the 90-day mark is when I had finally met that goal of catching my 25 fish. So yeah, it was kind of like this silly thing, but it
I
along with
love
many
it.
other things definitely played a huge role in how I got sober.
God,
Definitely not your
I love
typical
this.
recovery story.
No, it's not, and that's what makes it beautiful. It is, yeah, inadvertently recording your sobriety, but doing it in a way that was so natural. And I think sometimes we forget about that. That this doesn't have to be as hard as we make it, wouldn't you think? Like it can
Oh
be a
no,
little
for sure,
simpler.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you said a few things that I want to touch base on that I think are kind of like very common, and I don't think I've ever really stopped and pondered this until I heard you say this. And you talked about your sobriety and your addiction at first, and you mentioned that you were sober during pregnancy. And I hear this so much, and I think that there's a lot to this, because I think when I hear of people, especially obviously females that can do this, it shows me how much love they really do have. And it seems kind of weird. No, roll with me for a minute. But what I mean by that is that tells me that there's something else at play here. There's something else that's kind of dragging the heart down, because obviously with this child, this person you're bringing into the world, you love this thing without even realizing how and why. And I always think it's kind of interesting that we can get in situations where we stop using for that kind of love, that deep love. And then of course, once the baby's born and whatnot, we kind of revert back to some of that, maybe that pain and that self-loathing or whatever. And I think sometimes people think, oh well, shoot, if you did it for that, you should be able to just do it for normal and just be sober all the time. But I think there's something about that deep love, and it's something that I think you may have discovered even past the 2020, you'll call it, right? And I
Mhm.
love that fact, because again, I don't think that's a very I don't know. I think it's a very common thing. I don't think it's something that people do without noticing. Like there's got to be love there, and so it shows me how much capacity you have in your heart, I guess is what I'm saying. And I've heard this with many of the people I've worked with, and how sometimes they look at that, well, I could do it for during this time, but I couldn't do it other times. I'm like, you had a bigger purpose, you had more love. And I think that I think there's something to that. I think we should do a little more research on that. But nonetheless, I also love the fact that you did it non-traditional, and you did it in a way that just came natural. And we bugger this up so much, we make things so much more complicated than we have to. And so as you set that goal, and it was something that you set a long time ago, What were some of the themes that you caught, literally and figuratively, as you were out fly fishing? Like, what are some of the things you can look back at it now and realize, man, that was a lesson, like in disguise? Like, what are some of the key things that you noticed about not just accomplishing the goal, but doing it, that you can like kind of put into play, like in daily living?
Well, fly fishing in and of itself is a very, calming, therapeutic endeavor. I mean,
Hmm.
you're out in nature. You've got to have all your senses kind of dialed into the present moment. I mean, you're listening, you're feeling the wind, you're paying attention to your fly. I mean, everything is all focused in on that one moment. Like, so it's very much right here in the now. We're not worrying about, what's going on tomorrow. We're not worrying about, anything. I mean, everything is gone except for what you're worrying about right then and there. And it's like such a powerful lesson, especially in recovery. Like if you get caught up in, I didn't want to quit drinking. I'm almost to 8 years on the 22nd of
Wow.
this month. And
Yeah.
I didn't want to quit drinking for 8 years, like,
Hmm.
whoa, if you would have told me that I would have been sober for 8 years, that would, I mean, I probably would have like been
Blow
like,
your
no,
mind. Yeah.
yeah, like how about
Mhm.
no? And that sounds awful. And like, yeah. And so, but when you're just focusing on the task at hand, yeah, like keeping it simple. Let's just focus on today. We're not going to worry about 8 years from now. We're just going to focus on this right now. It definitely makes it more manageable, and that's one of the key things from fly fishing.
I love that. That's a big deal. I think sometimes we get so in our heads about what's coming next and these goals that we set, and and trying to learn a lesson from the past, that we forget to just be in the moment. So I think that is spectacular. I just got done watching and kind of rereading the book, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, which I think everyone should be reading. It should be a standard issue book, because my daughter needed to do a quick like book report at the end of the school year, and I'm like, well, let's do something I can help you with. And that was one book that I've read cover to cover and everything. And that's what they speak about a lot, is about what time is it? It's now. Where are you? I'm here. What's important? This moment. And just hearing you describe that, and kind of getting that mental picture, because if listeners, if you can get that mental picture in your head about what a fly like fishing experience looks like, it's always like that quintessential like sunlight beaming through the trees and the stream, and then that motion of the cast. And I've seen people do this, and it boggles my mind. It's got to be a talent in and of itself. And so I can see how that rhythm and just that peace of mind needs to be. I mean, you can't be focused on anything else but getting it where you want it. And I've seen people that can land that fly exactly where they want it. And I'm
Mhm.
like, how in the world? So I can see that kind of like, I don't know, we'll call it like that Buddhist mentality of like that peace and being in the moment. So you describing that brought me right there. So yeah, thank you. I think that's good for the listeners to know, is it's about this moment and nothing else.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's really in all aspects of life. I mean, it's always good to keep moving forward and have goals and look to the future, but at the same time, it's you're only going to get there by doing what you're doing today.
Exactly. I love that. The effort that it took, 20 bodies of water. That means you had to move and groove. I mean, there were places you needed to get to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Um, I think that's amazing. You invited your family along, obviously. And so tell me a little bit about the healing process with them kind of right beside you. How was that?
Well, so it was, like my girls were young, but they were old enough to know, you know, that what I had been doing was damaging, and it was damaging to them.
Hmm.
They hated it. They didn't like me using. My husband also, he was heavily addicted to alcohol and pain pills at the time. And so he also entered recovery about the same time that I did. So we were kind of on this journey together. So I think, going through some of, like my girls to this day hate camping. So they're not the hugest,
They're normal teenagers and they're
yeah, they're
normal
not
kids.
huge
Hmm.
fans of the outdoors by any stretch.
Which
So,
is funny because of where you live, which we'll talk about later. But that's
right.
awesome. I love
Yeah.
it.
So, but it was nice to be able to spend that time actually because we would go camping before, but, my husband and I would be, too busy drinking or whatever to, really pay attention to the girls or have any, meaningful conversations or experiences.
Hmm.
So I think being able to do that together and experience that time together, like, true quality time was really, really super important.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of relearning, like, what did it mean together as a family to spend time together without alcohol? What did that look like? And that was a process. It wasn't. I mean, it was kind of like we just did it because we were a family.
Hmm.
We knew how to spend time together, but it was definitely different and new. But it's so precious.
You know what's
I
funny
cherish
about
it.
that? I love it. My friend Desmond Lomax, who I went to school with, and a dear friend of mine, he and I were speaking once at a conference about Addict to Athlete when he kind of adopted the program into the uh, the prison system up in Salt Lake, and he talked about like the normalcy of life, and he says like it's normal to like go to Walmart on a Friday night with your wife because that's just it's date night now. And he talked about how like this pursuit of always trying to be bigger, better, faster, stronger, get the best high, get the best drug, whatever, get the best alcohol, whatever, how that's not normal. And he talked about this normal things. He's like going and buying shoes for my kids, that's normal stuff. And I love the normalcy that you're talking about, because it is like camping and experiencing that stuff with your family. It's normal. And sometimes we think, well, in order to like experience this, we have to make sure we have all of our supply with us, and you don't. And so I love the normalcy that you're putting onto this too, that it took effort and it took that, but it was normal. It wasn't anything out of the usual. So it wasn't like you were, again, pun intended here, a fish out of water. You were doing this naturally. Is there any of those experiences that stand out to you as kind of like aha moments, or just like you can look back and think, man, that was bigger than I thought, like that experience or that situation? Was there any of the 20 um, that kind of really resonate deep with you? There's probably a lot, but I don't know. Is there one that stands out?
Um, yeah, I mean, there's a few that really stand out to me. One in particular, one of the trips we were backpacking in the UNs. It was the first trip after my husband had got started on Suboxone treatment and was no
Mm-hmm.
longer taking um, pills, and we were going to go backpacking and see how this was going to work. So, we didn't know how his body was going to react, how he was going to feel, what it was going to be like. And I remember feeling just so intensely just nervous and afraid, for the future. Because it was like I knew I could be sober. I knew I could. I was doing it. So I, was starting to believe in myself. I didn't know if he could, and so that particular trip was one of the ones where it was like, okay, this is scary, this is unknown, but here we are, and once again we're doing it. So that one definitely stands out because it wasn't like I was out in the backcountry loving every minute of it. I was out
Right.
there, terrified for my future, and
Yeah.
still, making making memories, still going through the motions of trying to figure this out. um, and it always helps to have be surrounded by nature when you're trying to figure out these really hard
Absolutely.
things and you've got a really heavy heart. So that one really stands out. And then the last one was a big one because we had the whole family was together, and we had to hike up a little mile to a lake up in the UNS. And it was this big brook trout. I totally remember. And my stepdaughter, Courtney, she was filming it for us. And it was like, oh my gosh, it was just such a big deal. And, I was just so excited. And, the girls were so excited because it was over. They were like,
Yeah.
yes, the
Like we can get
stupid
back to normal.
fishing goal is done. Yeah, that was about at the 90-day mark. And yeah, it was just so sweet.
That's incredible, though. Again, that's a lot of effort in 90 days. And it's funny that you keep using that word, maybe I do, the inadvertent part, because it's
Yeah,
true.
it
And
wasn't
it's like,
planned.
it's such a cool thing. I love that. If you don't mind, we'll see.
Okay.
Tell me a little bit about you and your husband, because I need you to prove me wrong, okay?
Okay.
Because I've taught, and it's, I know it's hard, but I've taught that people that have addiction in common have a really rough time, a rough go at this. And so, to have that anxiety and that feeling of like, I know and I believe in myself because I know me, but
Mhm.
can he? And I think that this happens a lot in relationships. And I've told people, I said, look, if you're in a relationship and it has addiction in common, the chances of that thing surviving is very slim.
Oh yeah.
You guys are figuring something out, and
Mhm.
I would love to know a little bit of your recipe, because I need to be able to one day, Haley, like to go back on what I've said, because I've never seen it. And so, I'm not jinxing you at all.
Yeah.
But what I'm
I am
saying is,
so happy to
I
talk
would
about
I
this.
would love to know, because there's so many people in that situation that's like, how long do they hang on? What do they look for? I mean, you've got a very good insight here, because from what I know, you guys are doing this together. And so tell me a
Mhm.
little bit about that experience, because man, that's a whole nother set of
Yeah.
variables, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, statistically, we don't exist. I mean, we're an anomaly. Yeah. So the crazy thing about this was when we decided to quit drinking, we were quitting together, and it was like, okay, cool. I struggled and my husband didn't. And I was like, huh, this is really
Yeah.
easy for him. Like, what is the deal? So about, I don't know, 72 days in is when I kind of caught him in this like crazy elaborate lie. And that's when I found out that he had been heavily addicted to pain pills for our entire relationship. And I had no idea.
Wow.
Yeah. And we'd used all these drugs together, partied
Yeah.
together. We had this, yeah, like why would he hide it? And that was
Hmm.
like part of our lifestyle, but he did. And so that was like, wow, that was, I mean, it was crazy because not only, am I trying to navigate my own sobriety, now I'm supporting a loved one who's navigating, this, which is unlike going off alcohol. It's a whole nother can of worms. It's just a very
For
different
sure.
experience what
Hmm.
he had to go through. Um, yeah, it was, that was really hard. Like finding out, that he had this serious addiction and then I didn't know about it. I mean, I knew something was up, like I had thought
Hmm.
for a long time he was cheating on me. I didn't
Hmm.
understand like what was going on, like why something seemed off and I couldn't put my finger on it. So then when I finally found out, it was like, oh, okay, well, this makes a lot of sense. But now what? And
Yeah.
fortunately, he was so done, with the path that he had been on, and so, and he didn't know that there was a way out of it. I mean, I
Hmm.
want to back up just for a second.
Yeah.
We met in a bar,
Hmm.
so really, it seemed like, and to anybody who knew us, the biggest thing we had in common was addiction and partying and drinking, and but the funny thing is, we met in a bar, but our first date was backpacking.
I love it.
So
That's awesome.
so even though we had this, we had the addiction in common, we also had this other bond that definitely was going to hold us together and pull us through, and it absolutely has. um, so anyway, then fast forward to me finding out about his addiction. We reached out to some different outpatient programs and started, he did the Suboxone therapy, and we started to do weekly counseling with a substance abuse counselor, which was absolutely huge. I mean, that was like so important because he kind of helped keep us from getting entangled in this codependent mess, which, I mean, it was just that it could have been really flippin' messy.
Oh yeah.
So he helped kind of define the boundaries and help us navigate this whole thing, me and my addiction, him and his addiction. I mean, and he just did it so skillfully. I mean, he was brilliant. He was a godsend. And we went and saw him every Wednesday at 6 a.m. for an entire year.
At 6 a.m.
At 6
Wow.
a.m.
That's
Yeah,
commitment.
it was.
Hmm.
Well, you have to be committed. That's
Hmm.
that's the kicker. Yeah, you
I
don't
love
do
it.
this by not being committed. So that was definitely a huge part of it. And just, yeah, doing what we had to do, and just taking it one day at a time, one step at a time. I didn't know, what my husband was going to be able to pull off. I didn't know if he was going to be able to do this. Like I knew, the odds weren't in his favor either,
Mm-hmm.
the
You're
odds
right.
weren't in my favor. I mean, statistically, none of this we don't exist, like I said
Exactly.
before. And so the key for me was I had to just trust in myself and what I was capable of, my abilities, my goals, my future, and not lose sight of that and let him figure out his part on his own. Like, because I couldn't control him. I
Mm-hmm.
had no say in what he was or wasn't going to do. So I
Yeah.
kind of had to let go of a lot of control. I mean, because this was not my burden to carry. Like I couldn't make him clean. There
Yeah.
was so So
Yeah.
it's just a lot of kind of walking side by side together, supporting each other, but being brutally honest about, what we were going through, and lots of dialogue. I mean, just always talking about it, and just keeping our eye on the prize, and setting, and once again, goal setting. I attribute a lot of, being successful in recovery to setting little goals, like whether it's
Mm-hmm.
a stupid little fishing goal or it's a goal to go to college, or
Mm-hmm.
it's a goal to run a 5K, whatever it is, just setting these small little goals, something to work towards, always bettering yourself and proving, okay, like I am more capable than I give myself credit for. And so that was kind of, we just started, working towards what do we want our future to look like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we kind of visualized together what we wanted it to be like together. Like when we get through this mess, and if we have a say in how this all plays out, what's it going to be like? And
Oh,
here we are in our
that
little
is amazing.
20-acre farm out in the middle of nowhere, just loving every bit of the life that we've created for ourselves, and feel
Oh,
super
that's
blessed.
awesome. That is listeners, I hope that you heard that. Maybe you rewind or listen to this podcast again, because eloquently said, Haley. I love the fact that you were able to separate the two and say, you know what, I'm here for you, but I can't do it for you. And he must have felt the same love and the same investment for self, because yeah, opiate addiction, man. And thank heavens, because coming now through the opiate epidemic, and the situations that could have went completely the other direction. I mean, amazing. And I love the fact that you are an anomaly to like the statistics, that it doesn't have to be that way, because I get to change my opinion and my view, because it takes a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of focus and a lot of goal setting and a lot of communication. Early on in our relationship with Marissa and I, and having been clean, but still have the mentality of the addict and the addiction, and hiding things and suppressing things, because if she ever finds out that
Right.
maybe she'll know I'm not the person that I said I am, and and what if she finds out the real me, she'll run away. And I found out real quick, as she started kind of pulling that stuff out and saying, you need to get in tune with yourself, that, man, I was like hiding for the wrong reasons. And I love the fact that you guys healed together and continue to do so. And, that it's an anomaly. You statistically should not be together. Statistically, I shouldn't be here. I mean, it's cool when we start breaking the statistics and start messing up the bell curve, if that's a thing, right?
Right.
I love that. That is way cool. And so your kids, I mean, they obviously know, they've
Mhm.
been through that. I mean, how have they adjusted to you guys, and just kind of like, wow, these guys are pretty powerful? Because I love talking about how when you get this together
Mhm.
and you kind of get that sobriety under your belt, and you guys start having this commonality of progression in your recovery and healing from addiction, your kids benefit tremendously from this, because there's no problem, there's no situation that you won't understand or help with. And I'm curious about how you've been able to raise your kids kind of in the mindset of like, it's hard, but we can get through this. I mean, what do you think they've learned? I mean, because we asked them, they're just gonna, well, nothing, we had to go camping. But what do you think that they've learned by two parents that have seriously conquered some pretty heavy demons and some giants?
Yeah. This is a tender topic
I'll
for
bet it
me.
is. I
So
bet it is.
I'm I'll do my best to navigate it without completely losing it. Um, so, the ultimate, my girls paid a huge price. They
Mm-hmm.
suffered significantly because of, our addiction. Being, raised in a household with two addicted parents is extremely traumatic. So in that regard, they've endured some significant trauma because of it. And, you know, they have a lot of work that they're going to have to do in that regard. But on the flip side of it, they have seen what healing looks like. They've seen me, go through the hard work of therapy, and, we talk about addiction all the time. We talk about mental health all the time. This is normal conversation, dinner table conversation. We talk about, statistics and, depression and anxiety. And it's just, that's what we talk about. Like, that's part of our just normal day to day. And that's super important, I believe, because they both add the trauma, that they have endured, as children. And then, then the genetic history, of having that in their, bloodline. It's important that they, know what they're up against, but also to know, like, this is how you avoid it. This is how you deal with it. This is what coping skills looks like. This is what self-care looks like. This is what it looks like to go to therapy every week. So yeah, I don't know.
Training them in reality. And you know what though, I hear you. And I think that's, that's part of this whole experience. And I think that had you and your husband not found this path and not found this track, I mean, the damage could have been just astronomically high. And the amazing thing too is that although those situations happen, they've seen that you can do hard things. And I think that comes with a whole life lesson of perseverance and strength and some of the things that are associated with that. And so it's easy I think for parents to get in the mindset of oh, we've done such damage and whatnot, but no, because if you would have kept going, you could have felt that way. But I love the fact too that you're open about it, and that that they've got the pain, they've got some trauma, and that you are able and emotionally willing to talk about it when it arises. I mean, that's one of the biggest things I've noticed. And one of the most humbling and humiliating experiences as a parent is when I've had to apologize to my kids, legitimately, have hurt them, their feelings and their emotions. And I've had to sit down and be like, oh, my bad. I screwed this up and I'm sorry. And it's rough, but I also think it's cool because when that happens, the kids get to see that, you know what? No, parents, they're vulnerable too. And that makes them emotionally strong individuals. So it's an interesting thing, isn't it? The whole experience and the whole picture. Yeah. So switching gears a little bit, hearing all this kind of stuff and just kind of thinking, okay, now I know exactly why you wanted to become a sober coach. Tell me a little bit about, about why you're sober coaching now, because again, we get the rec therapy and all that kind of stuff, but you moved out into the sticks somewhere. And I think it's absolutely gorgeous. I love your pictures that you take out there, but you've had another awakening, it seems like. And the situation that you find yourself in now has allowed you to prepare to start serving others. And I think that what you're creating out there is going to bless and benefit so many people. I want to help get the word out because you have a very in-tuned, I think, plan on how to help people struggling with addiction. And I don't know, but I think now I get that you're going to be working with a lot of families because you've been there, you've seen it. And so you're qualified beyond the certifications and the diplomas. You're qualified just through life experience. Tell me a little bit about your program. And you use the word, and I love this, I'm going to talk about this too. You mentioned as you were giving your background that you used to sit and watch the sunrise. And I thought there's a reason for that. So tell me a little bit about that notion and tell me where you're going with this.
Okay, so the sunrise, I mean, I spent, years, over a decade, dreading morning, dreading waking up, dreading that sun peeking through the curtains was like hell, hungover, anxious, sick, just miserable, hating life, not wanting to face another day. And then one of the first things that I guess you could say brought me joy when I got sober, and it happened quick within the first few days of not drinking, was sitting on my porch and watching the sun come up. And for the first time in what seemed like forever, um, welcoming that sunrise and like actually being like, wow, that is just beautiful. It's inspiring. There's so much hope. Like, and every day it was different, and I got to experience it every day with a clear head and gratitude, and just more resolve to do it again another day. And so yeah, so I decided that the name Sober Sunrise is what I decided to name my coaching endeavor, my business, because of the significance of that to me. I mean, I think of it in terms of how many, sober sunrises do I have, and that's, so that's a big part of it. And just the aspect of being outside, and nature, and how powerfully healing it has been for me in my journey.
Mhm.
So yeah, here I am. I've, almost 8 years into my recovery. I moved out here into the middle of nowhere about 3 years ago. And I know for a while there I was working PRN up at uni in Salt Lake and doing rec therapy and groups and stuff. And the commute kind of got hard. So
Mhm.
I took a break from that and just decided I'm just going to kind of hunker down on my little farm out here, um, and be a mom and get to spend this time with my daughter. She's homeschooled,
Yeah.
and just really enjoy this place for what it is, really kind of like savor in the life that I've created,
Mhm.
that we've created for ourselves. And so it's been, a good solid 3 years of like some serious, like, I think this is where I've done the most work in my recovery. Not recently, I've been going to therapy now for a year and really kind of delving into a lot of those, the deeper issues behind, how did I end up as addicted and messy as I did?
Yeah.
And, really getting into some of that and working on that. And so it's like I've always wanted to help people in recovery. I want to help them find recovery and get through, because yeah, I mean, I do realize my story is different, and it's I hope it's an inspiration to people, but I want to be able to use that and draw on that to help other people find, the same light.
Mhm.
But yeah, it, figuring out how to go about it, when would be the right time, being brave enough. Like, this has just been a huge stretch for me in terms of like my vulnerability and courage, and really being like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to put myself out in the world. And I am now, once you publish this on the internet,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm very, very publicly, here's my story. I'm an addict in recovery, and um, I I want to help people. That's really what it boils down to. And not just that, I want the connection. Uh,
Mhm.
I'm hoping that this is how it's gonna all play out. I
It
want
will.
people
It,
to.
it will. It will. And that's the thing. It's because of the population, I think, that needs your help. If you remember when we started the sober coaching stuff, one of the very first thing we talked about is that there are people out there. Who are the people out there that could benefit most from you? And there's a lot. There are family systems who need to come out and do your backpacking trips, and to be able to be pushed into a little bit of uncomfortable situations by which they can start, communicating with their spouse so that they can do this journey together. There are family systems that have kids that don't trust them yet because of the addiction. And the things that you have planned with your goats and with the fishing and with everything is going to bring a whole new world and aspect to addiction recovery and to the healing process. Because if you can teach this stuff to people by having the experience, and listeners, trust me, we're going to be leaving all the contact information for Haley and the Sober Sunrise program. You will be probably coming off the mountain or coming out of the experience so well fed that you'll be able to kind of take those training wheels off and do it yourself, to do what Haley did, which was, being able to experience the normalcy of life. And I think that's where your niche is going to be. I really do. And some of the things that you have planned, why don't you share with the listeners a little bit about some of the ideas you have, and as we get going, kind of like how that's going to, kind of unfold. But you've got some good ideas that I think are going to help people not just get out of the comfort zone, because that's kind of standard issue, but to really kind of, I guess, kind of show them that there's a more excellent way to do this. So share with them a little bit of your ideas.
So there's a few things I really would like to see happen in with Sober Sunrise, and definitely the emphasis is on getting out, in into the world, into nature, and recreating. That's
Mhm.
definitely where my focus is. But I would like to. One of the programs that I've got set up right now is a fly fishing program. It's 30 days where you're not doing necessarily learning how to fly fish only for 30 days. You're also working on your recovery for 30 days. So it's pretty intensive program, where we're doing both, and we're doing it together, um, and going out on the river, and just really experiencing some of the things that I've described in this podcast, but actually getting to work on that with a client. So that's one program that I'm really looking forward to. And then I like you mentioned with the families, I would really like to be able to work with families outdoors. Like let's hit the trail together. Let's you know go camping, go backpacking, whatever, and actually work with families, where one of them, or maybe both, parents or a child is struggling with addiction, and see if we can't figure out how to, like you said, communicate again, how to have fun together, how to open up and be able to just experience you know that time together, in a positive, healthy way. um,
Yeah, I love it. And listeners, be aware that she's Haley is a addict athlete certified sober coach. She's a licensed recreational therapist, and she's going to have the backing of Coach Blue here as a primary therapist and stuff. And so you'll have a good background of support. But the things that she's planning is unlike anything that's out there right now. And I think that this program is going to be, I think, very special for that person or those persons who really have found themselves kind of at a loss on what to do and where to go. The ones that feel stuck, that need to not be stuck in four walls and dimly lit rooms with inspirational quotes on the wall.
right.
We need you out there listening to the water, in the river, and to be able to gain the rhythm, and then to breathe the air and to feel the sun and all of that kind of stuff. If that is you, or that is someone that let's get you in touch with Haley and the Sober Sunrise recovery program, because I'm telling you, just you talking about this, I can feel the spirit of what's out there and what's waiting. And you've worked in the field for a while now. You get it. You understand this. And I think that for the families, or for that unique person who needs this kind of platform, I can think of no better way to execute your beginning than this. And so it makes perfect sense. I mean, we're going to put all your contact information down in here, but that land that you're on and that situation that you're out there in, what has it taught you? Because you've had some experiences that have kind of been kind of cool. What have you noticed just about nature and about that lifestyle that's really kind of opened your eyes to the bigger purpose on why sobriety was so important for you?
Yeah. So I think it's really come into super clear focus, with this COVID-19 pandemic, uh,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, it feels like the world is coming to an end. I mean, there was a brief moment there where it was like, what the heck is happening? What does the future hold? And, what I had every day to wake up to was this beautiful, gorgeous place I live in. Getting up, and I still had to handle the chores and take care of the animals, and still go through the routines of daily life. And even though, once again, like in that early recovery, even though there was this fear and uncertainty and not knowing, what the future held, I was still surrounded by this amazing, beautiful place. I still had, work to do. I still had, animals that depended on me. I really find myself, little things like, because this all kind of transpired about, the time that spring is happening, and, the earth is waking up again. And
Mm-hmm.
so, going out to feed the animals and hearing the bird song for the first time this season, was just being so in tune to all these little things that are going around. It's like, this is the stuff that matters. This is the stuff that's not going to be taken away because, they've closed down, the shop, or our economy is struggling. The birds are still chirping. The flowers are still coming up. The sun is still rising. And once again, it's kind of bringing back into that present moment and being focused on, okay, right here, right now, in this moment, I'm safe. The world is okay. It is moving on. Like, we're going to focus on this right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it did almost get to the point where I was so focused on the present moment that it was like, oh my gosh, like I'm paralyzed. There's no future. And so that's
Exactly.
sober coaching, the certification training, you guys were just really, you kept plugging forward, and it was like, okay, yes, I'm going to focus on the present moment to get through, but at the same time, I'm not giving up on the big picture. There is an, light at the end of the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
But
I
yeah,
love that. That
yeah,
is awesome. I could totally see it. I can totally see it. Like everything you're talking about, I can totally see out there. And you've posted. You're an amazing photographer, and out there. And I'm sure that in a roundabout way, that's going to be included, because again, there's so many different pathways and experiences that you do. Why don't you share with us your website? We're going to link this, but for those that are driving in their cars right now, they don't have access to the web page. How do people get in contact with you? And like I said, listeners, we'll leave all the descriptions in the content below, but tell the listeners how to get in touch with you if they want to maybe have a consultation, maybe they want to come out and check it out, maybe they're going to sign up. I know they're going to sign up, Haley. So how do they contact you? Where do
Okay,
they find you?
so my website is www.sobersunrise.com. Then I'm on Instagram at sober.sunrise, and Facebook, Sober Sunrise. So basically those three things. But yeah, the website has, my email and phone number. And yeah, I would be happy to talk to anybody. We can just chat and see if what I'm offering is going to be the right fit, and go from there.
Absolutely. And I love that. So, you were nervous about this, but did you realize how fast the time went? And that's what kind of stinks about this. We could talk for hours about this kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Like I
But
just,
I really enjoy talking about this kind of stuff, specifically with folks like you, Haley, who want to create. And, listeners, if this is something you want to do, if your community's struggling, I'm a firm believer that if we are waiting for the government or waiting for insurance companies or whatever to help us eliminate and eradicate addiction, we're in trouble, because the troops aren't coming. We are the troops, and it's us that has to kind of take a frontline stance at this. And Addict Athlete provides the addiction aspects of the sober coaching recovery programs. And so Haley's been a part of it. We had about 22, I think, that started this last little deal, and we're going all throughout the country now. And so, listeners, if this is something that you're thinking about wanting to do in your own community, with your own niche, with your own talents and leadership skills, jump on our website and check it out. We can train you. We can get you up to speed. Haley's taken the route of being an Addict Athlete certified coach to start her own sober recovery coaching business, which is amazing and very much needed. And I look forward to being able to work alongside you with this, because I'm passionate about your passion. And so jump on our website, check it out. Classes start all the time. And like Haley says, we just keep plugging along and we'll get you trained and certified. But I love to talk a little bit as we kind of wrap up. Haley, what do you tell the mom that's out there right now, that's in that same situation, that's dreading the sun rising because of the pain and the anguish and just that feeling of like being stuck? What do you tell her about, hanging in there, there's something better to come? What do you tell her?
that it gets better, that this is not the end of the line. This is not your destiny. This is not the path that you are destined to. That there is so much more to your life and to your future, and you just got to be willing to go for it, because there is a better way and a different way, and there is happiness and there is contentment and satisfaction, and like you will wake up one day and be happy that the sun has come up, and be happy to do the mundane routine with your kids, and you'll find joy in that normalcy again. It's there and it's waiting, and that's the beauty of recovery to me, is finding like just sincere joy in just really ordinary mundane things.
That's the best. I love that. Listeners, you have been well fed, and we're going to leave all the contact information down below to get in touch with Sober Sunrise and get in touch with Haley. I think that this is going to be an off the charts experience, and I'm excited to see this new wave of recovery. I mean, I think gone are the old ways of traditional recovery. I think now it's time to start understanding that there are so many paths and so many rivers towards being able to experience sobriety and recovery. So as always, I want to thank Radio Ronin and the Radio Ronin Network for hosting Addict to Athletes podcast with Chunga and Josh and Spencer and Chandler. They do great podcasts. They do music. They do fun podcasts. Check them out. They are doing 2 a week. Jump on their Patreon. But yeah, the Radio Ronin Network, thank you so much for all that you guys do for us. And listeners, again, check out our website. Addict to Athlete, again, we operate off donations. So if you're so inclined and you can, jump on there. All your donations go back in to help the team and help increase our reach. But more importantly, if you are struggling with any kind of addiction, reach out. You're going to be having a network of people, from Addict to Athlete, Coach Blue here, all the way to Haley and this Sober Sunrise counseling and coaching out there. I think there's going to be great stuff ahead. And really, if you think about it in a roundabout way, listeners, it helps you turn your mess into a message.